After dinner, sleep. And when H dreamed, he dreamed in red. Until the noises came from behind the wall. A faint fluttering, your younger brother rubbing himself towards a climax on the bunk above. Your older sister babysitting with her 15-year-old boyfriend, getting fingered on the settee downstairs. Restrained, restricted, but frustrated enough to make you worry what's next. H sat up in bed and directed his gaze through the vermilion darkness towards the source of the noise. This was not his bedroom, not his couch, not his childhood room in his parents' house. He blinked until his short-term memory rebooted and told him he was in a room above the dead man's, furnished with flat-pack furniture. He took a deep breath, the smell of mothballs confirmed it. At the exact moment he regained complete consciousness, the groaning behind the wall became more explicit. H issued forth a cough of super-spreader proportions. No effect. The groaning was now accompanied by the knocking of a headboard. H groped in the dark for his shoe and lobbed it on the wall, but what with the grunting and groaning and knocking, now proceeding in a kind of stereo call and response rhythm, which could only really be achieved by 4 rather than 2 bodies. The noise in his trainer, quite cushioned around the sole, hitting the plaster, was rather lost. Then the noise outside the dead man started. The hiss of turbos, the growl of an oversized exhaust, wheels skidding on gravel, the bone rattling bass of some Bristolian dubstep, stopping dead before the voices of 2 women crooned through the night. Sally Anwar, get your fucking arse out here! There was a momentary slip in the rhythm next door, before it restarted in double time. H put his eye to a crack in the curtains. Both women, who clearly went to the gym 4 times a week, or how else could such a low BMI be achieved after 30, were wearing velour tracksuits, one baby pink, the other baby blue, sliders over fluffy socks, and each holding, from H's limited vantage, something in the vicinity of a 7-iron. Niamh Murphy Nevin, if you're not down here in 10, it was like the percussionists in the orchestra had set fire to their sheet music, and the instruments owed them money. You won't be seeing the outside of the trailer this side of Christmas. This seemed to get their attention. Ah, for fuck's sake, ma, would you stop embarrassing me? We'll be home in the morning. H recognised the voice of one of the underage drinkers. He took out his iPhone and dialed 999. The mother in pink pointed her 7-iron at the adjacent window. If I have to go and get your father, then I very much doubt this pub will be standing in the morning. Still nobody picked up from the emergency services. The landlord, who'd obviously been listening to proceedings from behind the main door, and of course he was, the bloody fish at the bottom of the lake must have been listening to this carry-on, was far more alive to the urgency of the situation. Ah, now, there's no need for that kind of talk now, Mrs. Ward. If you'll just put away the golf clubs and promise not to resort to violence, then I'd be happy to get the girls downstairs for you. This was not popular with the party next door. You will like shite! Pivoting his eye to the left, H could see a 2-finger salute being hoisted out the window into the night air. There was cursing on all sides, from the mothers who wanted to see their daughters back in their own beds, without also seeing their husbands carted off to jail. From the landlord who wanted the girls off the premises without having to treat other customers for serious head trauma. From the apprentices who wanted to get laid but didn't want to get burned to death in the middle of the night. And finally, from the girls themselves who just wanted to get laid in peace. Finally, the operator got their finger out. Guards, please. Yes. I'd like to report a pair of statutory rapes. The dead man's in, quick load. Now? Yep. Yes, I come here to the guards arrive. Yep. Thanks. H hung up, and hearing the shouting continue at pace, decided to restore order. He opened the window and used his CTO voice. I've called the guards. This stimulated negative responses all around. From the mothers because they were riding around in the car with no registration plates. From the landlord because he'd been feeding the girls vodka all evening. For the apprentices, because they didn't want to be on some sex offender register for bothering some 16-year-old tushy. From the 16s, from the girls themselves, because the way the Romanian lads had hurried into their boxers and were now banging on H's door, had completely and utterly ruined the mood. H opened the door, and seeing the flushed faces of his apprentices, instantly regretted it. H, you can't be calling the guards on us, man. It's not like we dragged them up here kicking and screaming like. H breathed deep, closed his eyes and centred himself. Do you know what the age of consent in this country is, lads? Ah, for fuck's sake, H. H raised a palm to indicate that the twins were going to resort to foul language. The conversation was going to stop there and then. Do you or do you not know what the age of consent in this country? The apprentices traded looks. 15? Said Sylvia.
Hopeful.
17. Yeah, but nothing. Your ignorance of the law is no defence. That girl, if she is indeed under 17, which I strongly suspect she is, can never, even when totally sober, which is another box of frogs entirely my head, ever able to give willing and informed consent to sexual intercourse. The twins stared at their feet and whimpered. In the ensuing silence, H heard the landlord shepherd the girls out the front door. A volley of curses, palms striking cheeks, slammed car doors, the spin of wheels on gravel. The apprentices, still semi-erect in their boxers, sat down on the edge of H's bed. He was about to launch into a full-scale bollocking when the landlord arrived at the threshold to their room. H prepared himself for the usual toxic male equivocations. Sure, haven't we all done something similar? Lads will be lads. Instead, the landlord held out a cell phone, and even from the other side of the room, H could see a hearn lit up in the bright green. H's left eye twitched, and even with the window open behind him and the smell of sex wafted off the apprentices, that musk of mothballs was forming a wad in his throat. He stepped out into the landing and shut the door behind him. Talk to me, H. The noise of a members' club, the 19th hole at the Clarny Golf Course, the shipwrights' arms down in the marina, the bubbling background in total contrast to Ahern's glacial town. Shagging a pair of young ones on the sly, Ahern. Underage? Almost certainly. Drunk? Blotto. In the background, someone called Ahern's name, and from the muffled pleasantries heard down the line, H could only deduce that he'd been deposited under his boss's armpit. Absolutely, Leo! It'll be on your desk tomorrow morning. Thumbs stumbled over buttons. Sorry, where were we, H? Statutory rape of drunken teenagers? Ah, yes! The sound of a blowing nose. You've called the guards. Of course. Good man. It's the only thing for it these days. Got to stop the rot as quickly as possible. Any sniff of a PR job and these fuckers are swarming all over Twitter before you can write a press release. Understood. So obviously what I want you to tell the SS is that they are suspended pending an internal investigation, and that they will, in the spirit of fairness, be paid in full for the contracted hours on this job. But if they were to run off to some country like Romania with a bad extradition history with the Republic, then we would consider that, considering the trust we've thrown and letting them pull on the green jersey, a real betrayal of Team Ireland. Gotcha. And H? Yes? You have made your holy confirmation, haven't you? Excuse me? Of course you have. You were married in a church, as I recall. Good man. Ahern, despite not making the actual ceremony, previous business commitment, had still given them an envelope containing 10 crisp €100 notes. It was the kind of generosity that felt like a sentence. I'll expect an update once you're up at the Stokers tomorrow. Of course. And I'll organise some backup to be with you no longer than the day after that. Thanks, but can I just ask about that? The light went dead.